Hey everybody, this is Undead Viking coming to you with another video review. I am sitting here in my game room in Moorhead, Minnesota, and I am safely tucked behind my full collection of first edition Descent. Now, I never played as much of Descent as I always wanted to, basically because it was kind of a time sink. But I had a lot of fun with it over the years. And it was one of those games that I constantly thought maybe I should possibly maybe get rid of at some point or not. But I never could pull the trigger, mainly because I really liked the idea of it. You know, a way to play just the core idea of a D&D game. Just running into the dungeon, fighting and killing monsters, and running out. And also, you know, I like the fact that they tried to actually expand upon it with the Road to Legend and Sea of Blood expansions. They tried to make these big, long campaigns. And I actually played the Road to Legend campaign for a little while with my friends. And, you know, but for whatever reason, it just, you know, we moved on and we just didn't play it as much. And, you know, if I had to actually do a quick little mini review of my thoughts of the old first edition Descent, with just the whole, the setup time of it, and the process of actually playing it took so long that my friends would actually just kind of had the mentality of, well, if we're going to be spending, you know, 5-6 hours, whatever, playing this, we might as well just play Dungeons and Dragons. And that was kind of our attitude. So I have this in front of me, and I almost got rid of it. I almost did. But I had the idea of, since I was a father, and, you know, I started getting these before I was a father, but now that I'm a father, I always thought that maybe just possibly, you know, at some point in the future, both my daughter Rylan, who's 5 now, or my son Caleb, who's creeping up on a year, in 3, 4, maybe 5 years, they might want to sit down at a table and play the game with me. And so that's what kind of reason I held on to it. Now, of course, as you probably are well know, is that I can pretty much just shove this off to the side for right now. And I can show you this Descent, 2nd edition. This is the same thing, Journeys in the Dark, blah, 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 but it is 2nd edition. And you'll notice, instead of coming in a, excuse me, just need to move some of these boxes. Sorry. Instead of coming in this big giant coffin box, which, you know, I really like the coffin box. I like the fact, I mean, so nothing like this just says there's a heck of a lot of fun in here, right? But instead of this giant box here, you get this smaller box. This is about the same size as the old Doom box, if you own that from Fantasy Flight Games. Same size as the Mansions of Madness, that size box. And but inside it has everything you possibly could need. It has tons of figures, it has tons of heroes, it has tons of little tiny bits of cardboard, and it includes a mini campaign, a campaign that you can play as an Overlord against your friends over successive periods of gaming nights, and so you can actually tell a story as you play, and the players can get better, and so on and so forth. Now, you can just play the game as one-shot dungeons and stuff like that, but the campaign is in here. Now, what I'm going to do is, as always, I'm going to show you exactly how you play the game. If you're unfamiliar with the old Descent, it's really not that big of a deal. I always meant to do a video review of it, but never got around to it. But, you know, there are some differences with this. I'm really not going to highlight the differences. I'm going to have this just explain to you what I think of this version. And then I'm going to tell you, that'll, you know, be like how I think. But, I mean, I'm going to definitely show you how you play this game, of course, because, you know, it's not as complex as the old version. But it still has some rules and some funkiness and some cool dice you get to roll, and it isn't you know, easy by any means, but it's definitely a lot more streamlined, and it's definitely a lot more the ease of use, I guess, and the setup time is just drastically reduced. But kind of getting beyond myself, as I always do, so why don't you just sit back and I'll show you how you play Descent, Journeys in the Dark, 2nd edition. All right. Here we go. Alright, this is the starting map for the introductory scenario that the game gives you to play. It's a very straightforward objective slash combat, and it does a really good job of teaching you the basics of the game. If you're unfamiliar with this type of game, you'll notice that these pieces are kind of like, puzzle pieces, you see there, and they each have numbers. Like, see, that's number 26A there. And so, like, they just, snap together really simply. And if you're wondering, how you know how to set things up, you get this rather large book. It says Descent, and it's the quest guide. And if we turn to the first page, you'll see. Right there, you can see, there's the map, and ta-da! So you can see how easy that is. After you set that up, you figure out how many people are going to be playing. In this situation, I'm going to say that I had 3 friends that wanted to come over. I have more than 3 friends, but in this situation, I had 3 friends that wanted to come over. And one of the first things you do in a lot of these is you'll be placing these kind of green tokens, or search tokens. And these are locations on the map that a player can search, and hopefully they find some treasure. And in this situation, according to the map, you're placing those right there, there, and there. And if I could bore you for just a brief second, you'll see here on the instructions, you'll see here, there's one right there, one right there, one right there, and there's one right there. But you notice there's a 4 there. And that means if I had 4 friends that came over and played, I'd put another one there. But in this situation, since, like I said, there's only 3 people, this is what we'll be playing. So the next thing that happens is that I'll hand out these cards to everybody else, and they'll get to pick a hero. The game comes with 8 of these, and I'm sure that further expansions will have tons more. And so, like you can see here, like these, because they're the yellow, they're kind of, I don't want to say they're the clerics, but they're kind of like the shamans slash healers. The ones that are blue with this symbol up here, they're kind of the arcane users, magic, if you will. And the red, you can tell by the looks of these guys, they're the fighters. And finally the green, you can tell these are like the rogues, the scouts, that sort of thing. So each player will pick a character. So, let's say they took Tomble Burrowell, and they needed a healer, so they took Leoric of the Book, and every party needs a fighter, so they took Grisban the Thirsty. Alright, so then they've taken those. Now, if I can just show you these cards real quick, and I can maybe explain these things to you a little bit. Let's just look at Grisban the Thirsty here, because he's got the coolest name. You'll notice that there's some stats down here, and there's some stats listed here. This is his speed. He can move 3 spaces. This is his health. He's got 14 health. He has 4 fatigue, if you will. So that means, like, certain actions will cause you to become exhausted, or certain things will happen that will cause you to be exhausted. And so once that runs out, you have to take a moment to rest to recover your fatigue. And finally here, the defense die that he gets a white die. And there are 3 different colors of defense dice. And when I go over combat, I'll explain how combat works. But you can see there's a brown, there's a white, and there's a black. The black's best, brown's worst, white's in the middle. You'll also notice that there's some stats down here. It's kind of faint to see, but they're 3, 5, 2, and 1. Like 5 this is the strength, and there's a book there, and there's like awareness kind of here, and I think that's mysticism or something. I'm not quite sure. It's eluding me, my memory at this moment. But occasionally, certain things will happen. You'll have to test those abilities. To test those abilities, you take these 2 dice and you roll them. So let's say let's give him a good shot at getting, like, he's got a 5 in the strength, so he's got to test strength. He'll roll these 2, and you total up the number of shields, and if it's equal to or less than the number that you're looking for, then you'll succeed. So in this case, if he was trying to succeed in a strength test, he rolled 2 shields, so he would actually succeed, and he would pass that test. Sometimes those tests can be really difficult, because if he was testing, say, his awareness, which is a 1, I'd have to hopefully roll that one, and let's see if there's a blank here, like roll those 2. Or I could have gotten a 1 like that, and that would have passed as well. But regardless, that's if you ever have to test these scores, that's how you test those scores. So we've chosen our 3 adventurers. We have a cleric, a rogue, and a fighter, and so we'll find the figures in question. And here's Grisneck. I probably should have picked these up prior, but there's one other thing that you have to do before you start the game, is that each person has to actually choose a little bit more to describe their character a little bit. There we go. There's all those guys. And what they do is, like say in the case of Grishnik the Thirsty, or Grisban the Thirsty, I should say. How many times can I screw that guy's name up? There's these little decks of cards that are the skills. And if you can see there, it says Knight on the bottom of this. And this one says Berserker. And so the player will take a few moments to look through these 2 decks of cards, and they'll figure out which skill deck that they're going to keep for that particular person. Now, it's important to note that unless you're playing a campaign, you're probably not going to be using a lot of these cards, depending on what level of difficulty you're going to be choosing. However, as you look through the deck, you'll see that there's a point total on here. That's the fatigue it costs to use that particular ability. And up here with a little number by it, that is how much experience it costs to purchase that ability. So some of these you just don't get because of the fact that at the very beginning, when you're first starting out adventuring, you haven't earned any experience yet. So later on, after you've completed this campaign and you've earned some experience, you're able to spend that and purchase another card from your skill deck. But in this case, you look through here, and like you see here, there's one. This is one he gets. So right away, perform an attack with a melee weapon, and the attack gains +1 heart. That's damage. And so it costs him a fatigue to do that. So he'll get this ability to use. This little arrow here, what that does is basically this causes this action when you use it. It is like an action to do so. So whenever you see this little arrow, that denotes that it is one of that particular hero's actions on their turn. You get 2 actions each turn, but once again, I'm probably getting ahead of myself a little bit as far as the explanation of exactly how we play. So now we have, so each person will pick their deck. I'm not going to show you each one of these decks, but each one has their strengths and weaknesses, and depending on the person's way they want to play, they'll move forward from there. So now we move on, and then the Overlord player has to place the big bad monsters on the board. Now, each scenario will tell you certain monsters that will be used during that particular scenario, or little combat, or portion of the dungeon, if you will. And in this particular setting, it actually tells you that you'll be using Ettins and Goblin Archers. And so you go ahead and you look at you have these 2 cards. Here's your Ettins, and here are your Goblin Archers. And just going over these quickly, you can see that they have speeds and hit points, and also the defense die. And you can see that Ettins have that information as well. And you'll notice that there is like a normal version and this elite version, so like the yellow and the red. And you'll notice that the figures come in kind of like this off yellow, white, and red. And so depending on the color, you'll use the stats that are listed. And just so you understand it, once again I said movement, health, and defense. You see that this Ettin here, for its attacks, it'll use a blue and a red die when it attacks. If it gets a surge, it does +3 damage. And also it has reach, meaning, what does that mean? I'll show you in a second. And also it has the ability to throw. So you're like, what are these abilities? I don't understand. You flip it over, and it actually explains on the back of each card, what each ability is. So no digging through a rule book. Oh, what does reach do again? What does throw do? So you can just, it's all that information's right in the back of the card. Same deal with the Goblin Archers. If you look in the back of the cards, it just says, Scamper, this monster may move through spaces containing heroes, and Cowardly, the monster cannot spend surges on abilities unless it's within 3 spaces of any master monster or lieutenant. So you have those abilities listed right on the backs of those cards. And also, I forgot to show you this, in case you're wondering how many you use, it says on the bottom of the back, you'll see there, number of players, there's 2 people there, 3 people there, 4 people there. So in this case, for the Etten, there's 3, so we get to use 1 big red guy. So, and he starts on the campfire there. And for the goblins, you'll see you get 3 normal and 1 red. So we take these guys and we go ahead and they get to start on this location here. And this is according to the rules governing this particular scenario. Now, at this point, the game's ready to go. So the players go first. And each player gets to take 2 actions. And there's this really cool, you know, there's enough of these to go around. And like, here's the hero turn summary. And it says start a turn. And then like you start a turn ability. So if anything was going on at the start of your turn, you'd immediately do that. You get to refresh your cards, equip items if they're unequipped for any reason. And then you get to perform 2 actions. And there's all these different actions that you have to do. And remember when I showed you that action that the dwarf had, as far as you know, the action showed that it would cost 1 fatigue, but he could rage. Now there's something that we actually kind of screwed up the first time we played, because we thought that because of the fact that the card itself had that little arrow by it, and I'm of course looking for the card and I can't find it now. Oh, here we go. Like here, rage. Remember, it has that little arrow there for an attack. We thought that he had to use that to rage. That's 1 action, and then another action to attack. But in actuality, whenever you do something that actually has an attack with it, you just get the attack for free, if you will. So you don't actually have to do this, you know, and spend the 1 fatigue and then do the attack. You know, so just so you know that we screwed that up the first time we played. But so each person, like as I said, gets to do one of those particular actions. And then at the end of that person's turn, they'll flip it over. And if you look, there's the Overlord turn. So what we'll start by doing is, you know, like obviously the scenario of this is that the goblins are trying to escape. And each turn, the Overlord gets to replenish goblins, and they race to the exit. And so what the players want to do is they want to kill the Etten before 5 goblins escape. That's the whole purpose of this particular you know, campaign, if you will, or scenario. So if you're in charge of the dwarf, you can move 3. You know, he just goes 1, 2, 3, and you know, now he can't do an attack because he doesn't have a ranged weapon. But if he wanted to, he has to kill the Etten, so he's going to try to get close to the Etten. So 1, 2, 3, and up next, we'll just say the wizard character gets to go, and so they go. You know, they have a movement of 4, so 1, 2, 3, 4, and 1, 2, 3, 4. Actually, she probably wouldn't want to get right up next to the Etten because they, you know, wants to hang back a little bit. And Tumble Burrowfell will who has a movement of 4 as well. 1, 2, 3, 4. That's the way. Did I do that right? 1, 2, 3, 4. And so that's the furthest he goes. And he actually has a ranged attack, and so he's going to attack this goblin to see what he can do. Now, attacks are pretty simple. Attacks, you just look at the whatever item that particular person has that if they're going to be using to attack with. In this case, he has this, a yew short bow. And if you look, it just has a yellow and a blue die on that side. So, and also you notice that it's kind of cool, they have a number of hands it takes, and also the surge information. So he can spend a surge for +2 range and a surge for +1 damage. So, long and short of it, he's going to take these 2 dice, and he's going to say, have at thee, goblin, have an arrow. And we're going to roll, and we're going to see what we have here. So, now the first thing you're going to notice is that there's that number 4 on there. Now, a lot of people are going to say, oh, that's how much damage you do. No, that's the range of the attack. In this particular case, this range is going to be 4. So you've got to be within 4 of the thing you want to fight. So 1, 2, plenty of range. The number of hearts is 4. So he's doing 4 points of damage. So I already know the goblin archers have 2 health, but I'm just going to show you that real quickly. You can see here, goblin archer, normal 1, 2 health. So he kills this goblin archer and takes it out, and it's dead. So, and that's the player's turn in this particular turn. Now the Overlord gets to go. Now the Overlord has at his disposal not only some big bad monsters, but he also has the Overlord deck. And the Overlord deck is this evil looking deck of cards. And at the beginning he gets 3 cards. He gets 1 card for each person that he's playing against. So he's playing against 3 heroes, so he gets these 3 cards. And he gets to draw 1 more. In actuality, I should have had these cards in my hand because of the fact that the Overlord can play these cards as needed. When like something happens, like if he wants to try to slow up the heroes as they're taking the turns, springing traps and what have you. But he gets to draw a card at the beginning of his turn. And so like looking at this card, like he has Dark Charm, you know, play this card at the start of your turn. On the hero test, if he passes, you know, draw. So there's certain ability, you know, you can basically charm a dash, play this card when an activated monster. You can form additional move action. And, you know, that's going to be good. I'm going to be using that so I can make something move fast. Oh, Frenzy. Play this card when activating a monster during your turn. Monster may perform an additional attack. Oh, and Critical Blow. Play this card when a monster attacks a hero after rolling dice. The attack gains Surge plus 3 damage. So I could do a heck of a lot of damage if I'm able to hit with that. But regardless, me as the Overlord player, I have to recognize that I need to get these goblins out. That's the only thing that matters. It doesn't matter how many they kill or whatever. If I can get 5 goblins and they escape, I win this particular combat. So because goblins have Scamper, they can actually pass through the area that an opposing hero is in. Normally, you can't move through an enemy's spot. You know, the same side can move through each other's spaces as many times as they want, but if you're on opposite sides, you can't. So, like I'll just take this goblin. I'll go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, and well, I don't. Yeah, they have 5 movement. So now the thing is that the goblins can move again, but water takes an extra move action to get into. So he's gonna take another turn. So 1, 2, 3, 4, you know, 5. So he makes it to that location. So now the next goblin goes, and he's going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 4, 5. Then 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And now the last goblin, 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. And I'm kind of annoyed that they kill the goblin, so I'm going to actually have the big goblin turn around, and he's going to shoot at the guy that shot one of his buddies. And so, once again, I'm going to take out the goblin card, and I'm going to look at his abilities, and I'm going to see that the goblin also uses the blue and the yellow die. So, we take these 2 dice, roll them. Plenty of range here. I got a 5 and 3 hearts, so I did 3 points of damage to the little halfling guy that shot down my buddy. So we see here that he has 8 health. You get some health markers. I don't have those out handy actually right now, but you know, we don't actually use them anyway. We actually just use dice instead because I don't really like using a bunch of little cardboard. So I would have an 8-sided die, and I take the 8 and I put it down to 5, and we know that he's taken 3 points of damage. Now finally the big bad Eden gets to go. And so we're going to move him forward 1, and we're going to attack with his big bad club, and we're going to look at the Etten card, and we're going to see that he gets to roll the blue and the red die. So hopefully he'll do some really good damage against that dwarf that's standing right in front of him. Roll the dice, and oh, look at that. So I got 3 hearts. Range really doesn't matter because he's right in front of me, but I just got to make sure that I hit. So 3 hearts plus 2, 5 damage, plus, if you'll notice, there's that little lightning bolt there, meaning I got a surge. So now I can look at the Etten card, and I can see that for the surge, I can go ahead and add an extra 3 points of damage to the attack. So yeah, that's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do a big whopping 8 points of damage to Grisbin the Thirsty. And even though he's got 14 health, I've managed to knock him down over half. And now the Overlord's turn is done. Now, I could have, if like I had rolled an extra surge, you know, if I'd rolled 2 surges, I could have used this ability and do another 3 points of damage. What I should have done, now that I'm thinking about it, is I should have played this dash card
on the Goblin, this one, because he could have moved, done his attack, and then as I played dash, because it says play this card, I can prove an additional move action according to my other 2 actions. So if I played that card, I actually then could have said, and now he's going to move again, and I'm going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, getting him that much closer to the exit. So I mean, if I had been thinking, and actually while I was just playing this, I probably would have done that as well. And I'm just so you can see how the game, the test of the abilities work, I'm just going to show you. This is the Dark Charm. Where I play this at the beginning of the start of my turn. If I pass, then I get a card, but if he fails, I get to pour a move or attack action of the hero as if I was one of my monsters. So let's say I played it, and I played it on Leoric the Book, because I didn't do anything. And so it says to test that little sun icon. We look at his particular character. He's got 2, so we would roll these 2 dice. Oh, and I rolled a 5, and of course, since that one landed like that, my friends would yell, it's a cocked dice, roll it again. So, okay, fine, I'll roll it again. Oh, yep, so it's 3. So, unfortunately, I would, for the heroes, that is, I'd get to activate him, so I could say, okay, well, he's going to step forward, and he's going to attack his friend, and I roll the dice for his attack, and hopefully I do some more damage. But you can see that's that added wrinkle. Now, there is one other thing that I just want to show you as far as how the game is set up. Actually, 2 things. One thing is that if you go to these locations and you stop at them and you search them, you just pick up the token. In some of the scenarios, the token will have a special symbol on the other side, meaning that you found something special, and that's kind of a random situation. And this particular battle, that doesn't exist. But if you do search, you get to take a card off of this deck, so you flip a card over, and like in this situation, you get a health potion, and you could use that to recover all your health, as you see, or it's worth 25 gold coins at the end of the combat. Now, why would you want gold? Well, because you want to buy things, obviously, and so there's these purchase decks of items that you can go through, and after you've earned some money and earned rewards, like a crossbow, and it's 175 gold. Or, a heavy cloak, exhaust this card after the dice are rolled and cancel a surge, and things like that. So you can earn these items as you get more and more money. So that's one of the reasons why you might want to play this game as a campaign, because you actually then get to see your players get better as time goes on. But the final thing I wanted to show you really quick is that when you're making up the quests and making up the board, a lot of the situations you'll have is that when it tells you to make the map, and so like say you're making this map here, and I don't want to show too much because a lot of this game is about the experience of something new. It's kind of neat, but it'll tell you that the monsters, they'll say there's dragons in this one and there's zombies, but then there's an open group. And then what they mean by open group is that you actually get to go through the monster deck as the Overlord, and you get to gauge the strengths and weaknesses of the people that you're playing against, and you get to decide who you want, what kind of monsters you want them to face. And so on the back of each one of these cards, you'll see there's these symbols, like mountains, and that's like a cave, I believe. And depending on the scenario, it'll actually tell you which symbols you can use. Like you might have a situation where it says anything with a cave symbol on it, so there's symbol. And so you'd say, do I want to have an Etten in this one? And then so you see how many people, it's only 2, and I wouldn't get an elite, so I don't want him. And so maybe you'll take something else. But the game is actually very, very malleable in the way that the Overlord has lots of options available to them. Well, I mean, that isn't everything about the game. I mean, I wanted to give you a very basic rundown of how the game works. But that's how you play a Descent, and if you've played the original, you'll notice there's a lot of little differences, a lot of little subtle changes, and I'll kind of go over those a little bit more in my conclusion. But in my opinion, this particular system, it's a little more simple, but it flows way better, and it's a heck of a lot of fun. So, but let me tell you exactly what I think. Alright, okay, that's how you play Descent. It's like Journeys in the Dark. If you've played some of the more recent versions of Dungeons and Dragons after third 3.0, or you played Pathfinder, the whole grid combat is going to be, at the very least, fairly understandable for you. But there's times when I'm playing it actually with my friends, and they'll be saying things like, well, if I get take more than a 5-foot step, they'll get an attack of opportunity, and then they'll kind of slap themselves in the forehead, and they'll realize that we're not, playing Dungeons and Dragons. We're playing Descent: Journeys in the Dark. What do I think of the game? I really love it. I remember when, like I said in the intro, Descent for me was a really, really awesome game, and I always wondered why we didn't play it more, and I realized that the reason why we didn't play it more was just that. I mean, it's like if I'm going to sit down and play a game that lasts 5 hours, I'd much rather just be playing Dungeons and Dragons, because, that's the game, that's my first game, really. I mean, D&D was how I kind of got into the whole gaming hobby. Now, it isn't a board game, obviously, but the reason why I play board games goes hand in hand with the fact, the reason is that I got hooked on role-playing games when I was, in 5th grade, back when I was 10. So, I like the presentation. I love the miniatures. I think these are just super cool looking. The game itself is very, very easy to grasp after the first few dice rolls, which is pretty much what this game's all about. It's a tactical miniatures game. Yes, I mean, there's like a storyline and objectives, but it's just like any other tactical miniatures game. Like if you were playing a mech warrior game, and it was, you need to take over that city, and you're fighting against somebody. That's what your objective is, and you move your little battle mechs towards that city and take it over. And this game, if your objective is to protect the harvest, if you will, like the grain, the bags of food of a farmer's farm, and the other person's goal is to take those and steal them. I mean, that's just the objective, and then there's dice rolls and there's combat. I say there's a campaign in this game, but there really isn't. It's scripted. In a real true RPG, the players, have an open sandbox type of thing. They can do anything you want. You can tell them, hey, there's a problem out at the old abandoned fort on the outside of town. And your players will say, whatever, we're going to go to the swamps. And then you as the DM have to say, okay, I guess we're going to not go there, and I'm going to make this map quick about the swamps and have some lizardmen in there. And you have to be thinking on your feet. In this game, it isn't like that because you just don't have that ability. Now, what I really, really like about the game, as far as the Overlord is concerned, is the fact that they kind of did away. In the old system, they had these threat tokens, and for each thing you did, you gained more threat, and then you were able to spend those threat tokens to do certain powers and abilities. And now they just gave you a deck of cards. And the deck of cards, you get to draw those cards, and you get to use them as needed as the game is played. And then, and you can then, if you're playing a campaign mode, the Overlord, depending on whether or not they do well or what have you, will gain bonuses at the end of each adventure as well, and they'll get that experience points, and they'll be able to use those to buy more cards. And so it's kind of like a deck management thing, and I really, really like that, the fact that they can go through the deck, find cards that they think they're going to really need, put those in. I also like the fact that once you set the map, which takes a few minutes, but once you've done it a few times, the players can help out, obviously, but once you've done it a few times, it snaps together really quick. But what I really like is the fact that the game is kind of open-ended in the way that a lot of the scenarios don't completely dictate what monsters you're going to be using for any particular like battle or scenario, if you will. It'll tell you, okay, you got to use goblins and you got to use a dragon, but you have an open group and you can use it around. And then so you can look and you can see which types of monsters match up to the types of monsters that are allowed to be used for that particular scenario. And then you can gauge how powerful the party is. Are they strong melee? Well, then maybe you'll get a nice ranged monster. That they'll give them fits because it can stay away from them and shoot them from a distance, and they're not able to get next to it and fight it, or things like that. Or like the Shadow Dragon is really tough against melee because they have to use a surge to actually be able to hit it. So if they can't roll a surge, they aren't able to do any damage to a Shadow Dragon, and things like that. I mean, the Overlord player gets to modify what's there to best suit give them the best chance to win, because it isn't like a Dungeons and Dragons game where the DM, well, technically the DM I guess is kind of against the players in a way, but they're there to tell a story, and this way you're actively trying to defeat the players, because if you defeat them then you get more bonuses at the end of the game, and if you're just playing a one-shot adventure then you can say I win. So the thing about it is, and then on the player side, once again, it's very modifiable. If you're just playing a single shot, you decide upon what level of difficulty you're going to be using. So like if you up the difficulty of the dungeon, the Overlord gets better creatures and better cards, and then the players themselves, they can go through the purchase deck and they can outfit their characters if they want. But it really shines for the players when you're playing campaign mode, and they're able to gain experience, and so then they can buy new skills and abilities out of that particular classes skill deck, and so they can modify their character. They can use the money that for the items that they find and for the gold that they find in those adventures, and they can use that money to purchase better equipment that will help them out in the future. And so it's one of those things where there is a little bit of a role-playing aspect because of the fact that you get to see that character grow and experience and get better, and so you kind of really enjoy that whole process. And I will say that the campaign that's involved in the game, while I think maybe a little bit too short for my tastes, it does tell a pretty cool story, even though it's kind of obvious which way they're gonna go. Just like it's like, oh, I can't believe he was the bad guy kind of thing. It's still really well done, and it's a classic fantasy storyline that's really fun for the players. And the really cool thing about the game overall is that I've been playing mostly as the Overlord. And I do really bad when I'm the one person against many. I don't know. I think it's just me, or maybe I'm just intimidated by facing several of my friends all at once. But so I lose a lot. But I always have fun anyway, because it's just fun to kind of play the game. To move your figures around, move your monsters around, and try to knock them down, try to beat them up. And even though maybe you don't pull it off and you don't manage to win, I've still really dug the whole process of the game, and the whole process of the rolling dice, and of the tactical miniature movement, and all the different powers, all the different abilities. And so I've really enjoyed the game, even if I've lost. And to me, that's kind of when I know that a game is really good. If I'm losing but still having a blast, then you know what? It's serving the purpose of the whole point of playing the game. A lot of people say, well, it's like, I hate the quote, that it's like the goal is winning, but it should be the goal, not the winning is important. But that does make sense. I know a lot of people out there say, I'm going to win, and I'm going to win, and that's the only thing that matters. Well, you know what? I lose 90% of the time. So if that's all that matters for me, I would have stopped playing board games a heck of a long time ago. So, in summation, if you made it this far, I think this is an excellent reboot for this franchise. I think they've taken the game and they've simplified it down, and with the inclusion of the fact that, like, with 2, 3, or 4 players, and how the monster groups are set up, and just how easy, comparatively speaking, how easy it is for, if I just wanted to say, I want to make a dungeon that has a bunch of ettins in it, and I want to have some spiders as well, and then at the very end there's a really big bad shadow dragon. I can make that super easy with just the rules that are in here, just because it scales. You can scale it very easily. There's like a scaling aspect in the rules that tells you, okay, you're facing 3 people, then that's how many shadow dragons you get, that's how many ettins you get, that's how many spiders you get. And I can just make that little dungeon up in a matter of moments, and it's just my own little scenario, and we can play, and we can have a blast, and we can have a good time. And in the old Descent, it wasn't that easy. It wasn't that you didn't have. It wasn't like you could just throw a dungeon together in a matter of 10-15 minutes like you can with this. So I'm really glad that this came out. It's totally revitalized the whole Descent line to me, and I'm really excited about the fact that there actually is a conversion kit that's going to be changing all of the old first edition heroes and monsters over to second edition.
And it's just basically they're replacing all of the cards. You can take all the old miniatures that you have with your old system, and you can just transport them over and put them in one big giant box. They're obviously not going to fit in this, but and then as long as you have that cool conversion kit that you can get for like $20, you'll have all the old stats. And technically speaking, even if you didn't have the old sets and you wanted to just cobble together some miniatures from somewhere, you could pick up that conversion kit, and then you have an entirely new giant influx of new creatures and heroes that you can apply to any further editions of the game that you're going to be playing this in the future. And I really see them just pumping out expansions for this that I will undoubtedly buy and pay through the nose for, just as I did for first edition. So there we go. That's Descent 2nd Edition. It is one of the best games of the year, at least for me right now. I don't know exactly where it is in the top 10. I don't really have that in my head by any means. But as far as having fun, this game is one of the most fun games I've played in 2012. So thank you very much for watching this video. If you have any questions or concerns, as always, post those, and I will try to answer those to the best of my ability. Until next time, thank you very much for taking the time to watch this video. I greatly appreciate you doing so. This is Undead Viking. You take care of yourself, and I'll see you in the next video. Bye-bye.